What's up, dudes? I'm finally doing the second part of the shift linkage, the EG Civic shift linkage in an EDEEEF Civic. So using a shift linkage from a 92-95 Civic in a 88 to 91 Civic. The 92-95 shift linkage, as you know if you've seen the first part of the video, is too long and it needs to be cut down. Cutting it down is what I did in the first part of the video, and I'm now welding it together, the two parts, about a year later, because that's how project cars work. So yeah, if you are sensitive to welding and how welding should be done, then just turn this off. Don't look away now, because I learned to weld about 10 minutes ago, and it's awful. It's the worst welding you've ever seen, probably. So yeah, look away now. All right, here is the first of two parts of the shift linkage in question. This is the kind of brace part of the shift linkage. This attaches to the transmission gearbox, runs along the side of the car, and this attaches to the chassis of the car. And through this hole is where the gear stick comes up. The transmission lever for the Americans. I don't know if you actually call it a transmission lever, but it's one of these. And it will come up through this hole just like so. And it screws in. There are bolts, studs on the bottom of that. So that is where the transmission lever gear stick comes up, and this just braces it in place, holds it in place. It's static, it doesn't actually move. The part that does the actual shifting is on the floor here in pieces. This joint, that's where the bitch pin goes, by the way. So that, and obviously I'm going to weld these two together, and that attaches to the gear lever itself. So yeah, what we're doing here's basically the piece that I cut out of this. If you remember from the first part of this, I drew a long straight line along the straightest part of the shift linkage, and then I made two cuts. This piece that I cut out is about 8 centimeters, 80 millimeters long, whatever that is in inches. Go do the maths. And now I'm welding this together. So I've already spot welded it, and yeah, these are not pretty, but they are welds, and I've managed to join two pieces of metal together. I've just spot welded it, and then I've gone under the car, I've attached it to the transmission, I've attached it to the chassis, and it lines up perfectly with the hole in the chassis where the gear lever comes up. So it's straight, which is amazing, because I've just done it by eye. I literally clamped it together with a pair of welding pliers like that. And the gap those left is where I spot welded it, and then turned these around and yeah, spot welded the other side. So I've just done this by eye, but it's straight. The length is correct and it's straight, which to me seems like some kind of miracle. We'll test that theory when we do the second part, but yeah, so this is what I've done. Spot welded it, tried to get it as straight as possible. By some miracle, I have done that. In order to spot weld, what I did was I got a flap disc out on the angle grinder. Obviously removed all the paint here, but I also created a little, like a bevel inwards. I got too aggressive in some places. There was almost no material left, and that's where the welder has burned through there, for example. So yeah, angle grinder, flap disc, obviously remove the paint and create a small bevel, because this is what they call a butt joint, I believe. Wait, is this a butt joint or whatever? It's where we leave a slight gap, and then we just run the bead down the middle. Obviously as well, ground is hooked on here, where I've also removed paint. So left to do here is just finish up these welds, clean it up, like sand it down. I don't want these bumps. I also have to check we're getting burned through, but judging by the fact that we've actually burnt through part of the pipe. I'm pretty sure we got enough burn through here. It took a long time to get the settings right on my welder. This is what I'm using. Just 1 to 10 on the wire speed. That's analog, so you can set it as wherever you want. And then the voltage is 1 to 7, and that's a clicky click. There are literally only 7 settings. I'm using 0.8 millimeter thick welding rod. It looks like that. That's what it looks like. Go buy that. No, it's 0.8 millimeters thick. And gas, obviously, gas welder. I'm not sure what else there is to say. I'll give you some welding footage now. Again, if you're sensitive to this, you're probably not watching anymore. But if you're still here, just please don't kill me in the comments. I'm doing my best. I'm learning as I go. Right, so in case you've never welded before, I realise I'm really zoomed in here and you can't actually see me. And we're also going to cut, you've got too much sticking out here. Cut a bit off. There's no point in me trying to teach you about welding, but basically I always do a dry run first. So I walk the gun the way I intend to do it. Because as Mr. Tim Welds, who's amazing, go check out Tim Welds on YouTube if you need to learn to weld, as he has taught me. If you can't run the gun the way you want to with it off, you won't be able to do it with it on. Makes sense, right? Anyway, let's lay some beads. So I do think actually I've just burnt through a section where where I hadn't done any grinding. I burnt through that too, so probably the wire speed regulates heat. So I do believe my wire speed, which is at 2.5 out of 10, let's turn that down to 2. That sounds very low. I do believe my wire speed was too high there, and then I think can probably bring the voltage down a bit too. Let's see. Like that. Okay, so we basically need to build back up the part that we burnt through here. Again, I hope you're not sensitive to welding. Go watch some other YouTube channel. I'm learning as I go. Alright, so we're actually starting to build that back up. It's nice. My welder is not releasing the gas. It's just spraying gas. Please close the valve. Please close the valve. Thank you. This is what you get when you buy a second-hand welder. Sometimes. It has its quirks. For some reason, it's not closing the valve for the gas like it should be. Okay, let's build this up. Yep. And then there's a hole here on the other side. Cool. Close the valve. It's just spraying gas. There we go. God knows why it does that. Right, I'm going to turn the gas off before we waste any more. Closed. Gas is closed. Thank you very much. Let's take a look at this. Alright, so you can kind of see here how I built it up. I'm obviously going to have to grind that flat and then put some paint on it to stop it from rusting. And wait, there are still holes here. Okay, I have holes to patch still. I will do that, but I'm on a limited time, so I have a baby monitor over there. He could wake up any minute, and then I have to rush in, wash my hands, take off all my gear, tidy all this up, turn everything off, and so on. So I'm going to get on with this off camera and show you the finished result later. This is fun though. Like, welding looks a lot easier on YouTube than it is in real life, is my experience. But once I had the settings dialed in for the machine, that's what took the longest amount of time. And also this machine seems really temperamental. Sometimes it doesn't seem to wire feed properly, so I may have to take it in for a service. As you saw, the valve for the gas doesn't switch off properly as it should, so I'm wasting a lot more gas than I should be. But yeah, this is kind of fun. I'm getting the hang of it. I know what I'm doing. I can kind of build up on this now. So yeah, so this is the first piece of two. Let's get on with it. All right, so we're gonna prep the other. It's cold in here. We're gonna prep the other shift linkage for welding. If you're following along at home, if you have a pipe like this and you want to know if the cut is straight, or in this case not straight, or rather how unstraight this cut is, take a piece of paper. I have a post-it here, which is handy because it stays in place. Just line it up with an edge somewhere and then wrap it around. And what you want to do is get the edges of that post-it to line up exactly. So that creates, if you wrap that around the pipe, if you wrap that around, it gives you an exact straight edge, and from that you can then see where you might need to remove a bit of material to get it straight. And it's not actually as bad as it looks freehand. I'm going to take the kind of the lowest edge here and take a look, and that's good. And it's really, I don't know if you can see this. If I let go of this, it's gonna stay. It looks like it's staying. Right, I can show you here. So I've lined it up. You see so I've lined up the edges of that paper, and I've lined it up with kind of the shortest part of this cut. And you can see, I'm really sorry about this filming, but there you can see that we have stick out, and on top, focus, on top there, right where my finger is, focus on my finger, thank you. There, we don't. So just needs a very slight trim there to get a straight edge. So let's do that. Safety first, kids. Goggles, earring, gloves. We are still recording. This is very good. And then my little friend, the angle grinder. Let's see if we make this straighter or worse. Paper. I want to take just a little bit more there. It's better to take too little than too much. bit more. There's kind of a point forming there. Like a lot of things, painting for example, I think a lot of welding is about the prep work, and that looks straight to me. Awesome. Right, now the next thing we're going to do, I'll just bring the piece to you instead. Oh, come on, focus. Focus on that. Yeah. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is create this bevel. Obviously we've got to remove the paint, just probably a centimeter from the end here. We're going to strip the paint. I'll just do that with the flap disc. And then I'll create a slight bevel on this edge. Actually, I will try without the bevel because I think the bevel caused burn through on the other one. So that caused more problems than it really solved. So yeah, I'm just going to strip the paint off this. That will take away some material. I'm using a very coarse flap disc, so it will remove some material anyway. And then I'll repeat what we just did on this other piece and strip the paint on that. And just not to be silly about it, let's make sure we don't remove the marking we made when we cut this, because that would be unfortunate. Like angle grinder yoga. Cool. Yep, paint removed except for where our mark is. So let's do the same thing on the other piece. We're gonna cut here and go to the welding table when that's done. All right, so here's my slightly weird setup that worked beautifully last time. I've obviously lined up the two pieces here that we're going to join together with the guide line there, and then I've put a pair of or a welding clamp on it to hold it in place, leaving this little tiny gap here exposed, which is where we're going to run our bead. That's going to be the spot weld. Then we'll flip the clamp over so that we can do the same on the other side. Then we'll test fit it under the car before we seam weld. Or try to seam weld around the rest of it. One thing I forgot to mention is obviously grind off some paint here for your ground. The ground spot is ground because the paint has been ground. Let's spot weld this. I'm getting better and better at this. Nice. Right, flip it over. Here's an illustration of how that works. I think that looks like a good bead. There's quite a lot of burn through because the bead isn't really sitting on top. It's quite flat. So yeah, I'm happy with that for a spot weld anyway. Let's do the other side. Okay, so here's the spot welded. Second spot weld, definitely a bit more kind of laying on top of the material there. Not quite as much burn through. I think that's because there was not this kind of tiny gap between the pieces. They were touching there. So maybe that's why you really should have a bevel on this. There's the underneath here, which you might not be able to see so well, is the first spot weld that you saw me do. You can see how kind of how low that is with the second one, which really rises like a bubble. But anyway, the purpose of these is not strength for the moment. It's just to check that the length and I guess also the angle is correct. I wish this would focus. I'm sorry, filming on an iPhone comes with challenges. In the interest of science, I do believe this piece that I cut was completely straight, so let's take a look. If we lay it down here, please focus camera. Thank you. We come along a bit. There is it kind of dips in the middle, but I mean that corner piece there right at the end of it is touching the material, and this corner is touching the material. So maybe it's just bent like a rainbow. And touching there, please focus camera. So touching where my finger is there, and I need to see what I'm doing. Okay, so it does tilt away here though. Here it starts to tilt away, so what do we take? A smaller guy and check closer to the weld. Oof, that's bad, I think. I think it looks worse on camera than it is, or maybe it looks as bad on camera as it is. Yeah, that's not straight. But I've been told that the tolerances on this are actually pretty high. If that's not straight enough, just cut up the spot welds and redo it. But I'm gonna get under the car. Oh, I wish I had a hoist. There is not a lot of room in there, and I'm getting too old for this. I can at least have some light. I'm gonna get under the car and see how everything matches up. See you under the car. All right, welcome to the underside of my car. If you hear that I'm whispering, that's because the phone is currently 1 centimeter from my nose, and I don't want you to pick up the volume too much. I'm considerate like that. Okay, let's have a look here. What we've done is we've mounted the first part of the shift linkage. This is the part that I call the brace, and then the actual gear lever is attached here, and this comes down. I have a ball bearing thing in there. I don't know if that's standard. This is a short shifter that a friend of mine has made. And here is the second part of the shift linkage that we've just spot welded. To note is that we're missing the metal cover for this. I need to find it. It's somewhere else. But the good news is that this is in here, and following the shift linkage along. Wow, and now you can see nothing. And I think the picture might also be upside down. Sorry about that. But it's on, like the shift linkage is on. This is the rubber boot that pulls over it. Oh my god, you can see nothing at all. I'm sorry. This is the brace part which is attached there. I mean, it's not actually screwed in, but it's on the thing that it sits on. and this is the jointed part. So theoretically, I should be able to get in the car now and select the gear. I might actually get out and try that. But it all looks okay. So it's really annoying to speak this softly. Yeah, so I mentioned that the tolerance is probably okay here, and that's because all of it moves relative to the actual gear stick. So, you know, if this is a degree out or something, all it's going to do is point the gear lever in a different direction. It's going to change the neutral angle. It's going to change the angle of the gear lever in any given gear. And as long as the gear lever still has movement to engage the gears, it shouldn't be a problem. So there's actually quite a bit of, what's the word? I'm looking for the word. You have big margins. There's big, oh, for fuck's sake, I said the word like 10 seconds ago. This doesn't need to be exact, is what I'm trying to say. Similarly with the length, you know, if it's oh shit, I just pulled it out. But if it's longer, the angle of the gear lever will be towards the dashboard. If it's shorter, the angle of the gear lever will be towards the handbrake. Yeah, this looks good. I'm going to pop that back in and get in the car and try to engage a gear and hope I don't break my spot welds. All right, here we are in the car. Voila, that's neutral. That's first, and yeah, there's massive wobble here. But that's second, that's third, fourth, fifth, and reverse was a bit dodgy, but there's reverse. I need to, I mean, I haven't tightened anything up, so of course there's wobble. Neutral, woohoo! It shifts, I can shift. Epic. Okay. So obviously the second part of the shift linkage is only spot welded at this point. Kudos to my spot welds for actually surviving a complete run through of the gears. But yeah, I need to seam weld that shift linkage, grind down the welds. I'm going for strength over aesthetic here, so I will just go easy on the grinding. It will be clear to anyone that looks that it's welded. And then a bit of primer and a bit of black paint. And then, you know, tighten all this up, assemble it all. I need to find some parts. The transmission, the gearbox, I got without any bolts, so I'm missing some stuff to attach all this. As with everything else in this car, there's parts missing. But yeah, job's a good one. If you were wondering, as I was, yes, you could modify an EG shift linkage to work in an ED EEEF, as I have now documented. So hopefully that answers any questions. You can put them in the comments. I'm not going to film me tidying up the welds and seam welding and so on. Excuse me while I get out of this car. Cool. Hope you've enjoyed that episode as much as I have. That was actually really fun. I'm really enjoying the whole welding thing. Yeah. And the next welding project will be the exhaust. Cool. Good night. Bye.